Hi everyone and welcome. In today's recording, I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming full moon in the sign of Virgo taking place on the 18th of March 2022. If you had been listening to my lunation updates for some while, I have been speaking about a series of full moons, one succeeding the other, which take place at 27 degrees of their respective signs, and this Virgo full moon is definitely one of them because you guessed it, it is taking place at 27 degrees of the sign of Virgo, which also means that the sun illuminates the moon from the same degree of the sign of Pisces, the opposite sign. This very special 27 degrees, well, it does suggest that this full moon, as well as the previous ones, it is going to be extremely intense, very powerfully karmic, and regardless of how it plays out, one thing is for certain, it is definitely going to change our perspectives about where this 27 degrees of Virgo falls into our personal chart, so that area of life, or something to do with that area of life. Now, some of the previous 27 degree full moons, well, some of them were pretty intense, they were pretty even shocking. Like the previous Leo one, for example, well, it did have a lots of shocking elements to it. Well, this Virgo one is actually one of the more soothing, calming, regenerative, cleansing ones. Because regardless of how this plays out in our lives, it can be a certain event like a karmic completion, it can be a termination of something, it can also be circumstances which do invite us to find a sense of closure. For example, my situation where, of course, this full moon will invite me to alchemize the passing of my mom and transmute the void that this has left in my life, regardless in which sense, psychologically, on a soul level, emotionally, Pisces, the sun in Pisces, or the physical, the practical, the real life one, the material side of Virgo, the practicality of everyday life, the luxury of being able to have a conversation with someone at any moment you desire, the daily routine. But of course, this is just an example. Another quality to full moons is their revelatory quality. This is where we can see certain things and be able to process them on a soul level with much, much greater ease. Sometimes, of course, because of shocking circumstances like the previous full moons. Other times, it is almost like when the universe, when the divine, when our fate, or perhaps Pisces, our own unconscious, hands us clarity on a silver tray in a very gentle, in a very caressing manner, because it does want us to find closure, it does want us to finally have greater peace and harmony and serenity and calm within our souls, because we can close at least one karmic matter. There are, of course, so many others which still need to be worked on, which still need lessons, changes, ups and downs, but at least one big and major, because I do believe that for a lot of us, this full moon is going to be closing a major karmic chapter in our lives, and that means greater spiritual, psychological, emotional, calm, peace, serenity, and us being able to allocate that much more inner energy, inner resource in any way, shape, or form to our futures, because the past that held this energy locked, grounded, is no longer part of our journeys, hence the release, hence the purification, the big termination, the closure, because when the closure takes place within us, in our inner world, in the inner universe, in our constellation, so to speak, our own personal sky, well, sometimes that closure will very, very, very quickly reflect an outer reality. Virgo, the earth herself, our physical existence, our daily routines, our physical bodies. So I do believe that this full moon is going to be one of those more gentle, loving, and deeply emotional in a good way kind of karmic manifestations. And naturally, this can play out collectively as well, not just individually. For example, such a Virgo full moon, Virgo, among so very many other things, does represent healthcare and the healthcare system, the physical side, the practical side, nurses, doctors, anything that has to do with microbiology, and how we, human beings manage this area of our lives collectively. So healthcare system, and of course, Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, so all the knowledge, all the data, all the information, the scientific part of this as well. So, as I said, a full moon is a completion, a termination, so that can very well end, why not, the COVID restrictions, or transform it at least in such a way where it no longer hinders us psychologically, the Piscean part of it. The isolation, the loneliness, and basically all the emotional hardship that all of us everywhere, all over the planet, regardless of our culture's distinct situation, well, all of us went through 2 years of very, very tough emotional hardship and very scary moments when we didn't even know what reality is, even for us personally in certain moments. We didn't even know who we were anymore, regardless if something happened, socially, collectively, politically, or something happened karmically in our own personal journeys. The past 2 years have transformed us in such a way where we genuinely cannot recognize ourselves and our lives and our routines, even our mindset, and so very many things that we took that granted about our own identity before. And this is beautifully reflected by the trine, a very precise trine that this full moon holds with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. Pluto is at 28 degrees and this full moon at 27. So that 1 degree difference, that is a really strong transformational energy. Of course, this highlights the revelatory qualities of the full moon. This is where something in our lives will immediately and clearly reflect back at us just how much our normality has changed. Virgo, our routines, our lives, and every small little detail that makes earthly life so very precious. Well, this is going to be a powerful introspective energy when it meaning the karmic forces, regardless of how they're going to be playing out in our lives, they will reflect at us just how much everything changed. And of course, for a lot of people, this is also a powerful karmic manifestation because Pluto can represent that very thing that you attract on a soul level. But that required a lot of sacrifice. Maybe a sacrifice that you have been continuously providing for the past 12 years. Jupiter's cycle. Because whenever Jupiter transits its home sign of Pisces, it does have the tendency to reward for a sacrifice that we have been offering karmically in any circumstance. For some people, this can simply be their jobs, especially if they work in charitable activities or charitable domains, healthcare service, etc., humanitarianism. For other people, it's a family member, their partners, their children, someone with disability, someone who needs help. Life will always require a big sacrifice from us one way or another. Of course, it is different. For some people, the sacrifice is time. For others, energy. For others, love, attention. For others, money. For others, certain choices, decisions, etc., etc. But this is one of those periods when many of us do get back a divine honor in the sense of a big completion for a sacrifice that we have also offered either to another person or to the divine itself, or something that we have done on a soul level, Pisces after all, and the past. Or it can even source from another existence. But that, depends on your personal chart much more than a collective energy. So maybe for a lot of people, a period of sacrifice, of hardships, a period when we had to offer a certain kind of service with a certain kind of standard and accept very little or nothing in return for the highest quality that we worked for and sacrificed for. For a lot of people, that changes at this full moon, give or take a week, because Pluto can be extremely generous. And also at the same time, this energy heavily activates the past, because one of the aspects is that the moon does trine the north node in the sign of Taurus, our karmic path forward, and Taurus and the north node can simply represent at times the resources, regardless in which sense, that we need for our futures to be able to work with that north node in the sign of Taurus. But at the same time, the sun trines the south node in the sign of Scorpio, and that represents the power of past karma, power of wisdom, the lesson, the soul level purity, the determination, the wisdom that we have invested into the choices we made throughout our lives. Honesty, dignity, us striving to be a pure person, embracing morality and human values, and alchemizing the effort that we invested into Scorpio, all the healing work, alchemizing forgiveness, being a better person. Each and every time we stopped our shadows, our ego from projecting filth and toxin onto another person, each and every time we did something with an inner resource, and when I say we did something positive, as in not allow it to turn into toxin, or not allow jealousy to get the better of us, each and every time we did something with our spiritual knowledge, each and every time we did something with our psychological knowledge or common sense as a human being, to try to be a better person, because ultimately that is the essence of the South Node in Scorpio. Basically, how much experience do you have with alchemy? But of course, alchemy to be understood in a very down-to-earth way. For example, what have you done with your traumas? What have you done with your deepest wounds? What have you done with all those lived experiences when you suffered the disadvantage, unfairness of life, or when other people perhaps used you or abused you, etc.? What have you done with all of this? How much did that contribute towards your own moral integrity? Because of course, sometimes we learn and grow through positive example of others, but other times we have to go through our personal hells and choose to be a better person, and choose not to allow pain and suffering and sorrow to drown us and basically devour us. And that is the greatest power of the South Node in Scorpio. Each and every time we sacrifice for another person, each and every time we chose to do the right thing, each and every time we embraced morality, purity, the Christ consciousness and the principles that go with it, each and every time we showed compassion and empathy. So basically, the symbolism of Pisces, each and every time we embodied that, the sun in the sign of Pisces, the trine to the South Node, the hand of faith, Pluto, ultimately, one way or another, can reflect back at us our true alchemical worth, the alchemical gold that we have deposited through our experiences within ourselves. And for a lot of people, that can be like almost a recognition, an honor, a job well done, symbolically speaking, falling out of the heavens, where the universe itself congratulates you for something big and something definitely sourcing from the world of the soul that you have completed successfully. This is a really, really good energy for everything that has to do with purification, and not just psychologically and spiritually speaking, but also physically. It's really, really good for detox. It is really, really good to start a diet. It is really good to, maybe if not physically do it at the moment of the full moon, but it's really good to research like plant medicine, alternative healing, anything that has to do with nature's wisdom. There is a really famous saying in my culture: nature has a solution to every single problem. And basically that is also within this Virgo energy, where solutions can come to us miraculously and with much, much, much greater ease than we could possibly imagine. Moon in Virgo trining Pluto, well, that can also represent ancient wisdom of within nature and of the old ways. The South Node in Scorpio can represent the occult and everything to do with the metaphysical, including the ancient wisdom, including ancient techniques, ancient healing techniques, alternative healing. So it's a really, really good energy for everything that has to do with physical purification, healing, detox, and the trine to Pluto, combined with Mercury being in the sign of Pisces. Mercury in Pisces can represent hospitals, it can represent medical institutions, it can represent being confined, but for a medical act. And the trine to Pluto, well, if you have any medical procedure programmed at around the time of the new moon, give or take, a week or even 2 weeks, it can represent surgical precision, it can represent surgery completed successfully, it can also represent something perhaps alternative, which offers an even better solution and is much easier. It can represent eliminating a problem, and quite physically as well, like a tumor or removing something, anything that has to do with operation, medical intervention to modify something or remove something, that Pluto. And it can also be really beneficial for some people who have like long-term problems or who have been waiting for like a medical intervention or a surgery for a long time. And even though the full moon doesn't converse with Uranus, still Uranus being this very, very active at the moment of the full moon, it can also represent where some experimental treatment, experimental, medication or whatever that was not that much available before, all of a sudden becomes very successful, and there is more than one alternative treatment, even to certain medical problems that might not have had a solution not so long ago. So this can also be a really powerful revolutionary energy when this Pluto implements something. Pluto makes like a procedure or something permanent. And thus it revolutionizes not just the medical world, but also, the management of a disease or a medical problem. And Capricorn is a really good symbol for the manager and the management of anything. Now, needless to say, from a spiritual perspective and psychological perspective, the surgery symbolism is perfectly valid, just that we remove something either from our mind, from our soul, from our emotional world, from our memory, and this Pluto trine is a really, really strong inner empowerment, because what this suggests to me, that this full moon can actually open us to a totally different perspective about our own past, that we could never ever ever perceive the certain way because we didn't have the wisdom and the openness and the physical condition. Because, for example, the fact that we're going through such a massive world change and we're so uncertain of the future right now does set up the condition for certain psychological energies to come to the surface, which normally would have never ever come to the surface on their own. And this helps us look at the past in a way that we have never done so before, where certain hardships, for example, certain bad situations, disadvantages from our childhood, let's say, are no longer as big and dramatic and doomy as gloomy as we thought all our waking lives, let's say. It is perhaps only now when we see it in a different light that yes, it was hard, but it was that hardship and me being able to cope with that hardship or to fight against or to be my strongest version still that made it so sacred, so beautiful that now I'm not a victim of my past anymore, but rather I give thanks and gratitude to myself for everything that I have done the way that I have done, and ultimately me being able to be this person right now today under the light of this really spiritual and karmic full moon. Because this also gives us foreshadowing, because after all, the moon is opposed by Jupiter, Neptune, and the Sun, all three of these really strong, powerful karmic planets. So this will give us an insight, a foresight perhaps through a dream, because Pisces is all about dreams and unconscious dreamy state, or an alternate state of consciousness, maybe through an act of escapism, a substance, plants, medicine, or our own inner journeys, meditation, etc. This will give us a hint of exactly what we can expect in our lives to play out around the 12th of April, when the conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune and Venus as well takes place in this degree, 27 degree of Pisces. And also this is Venus's exalted degree, so I can already say that for perhaps all of us listening to this recording at least, this can represent a massive artistic rebirth. Yes, these energies are highly spiritual, and Neptune, the divine illusion, but Venus's mixture also adds a lot of art here, and this is pure art. All of us are artists, and this is without a shadow of a doubt, and I'm sure that this full moon will really maximally pull to the surface the inner artist and the inner creative person from all of us, Pluto. It will be a very strong, irresistible pull towards creating and whatever our own special, unique form of art and beauty means for us personally. So this full moon is also really special for artists and artistic people because it prepares them. What for? Well, it's the 18th of March. That means that the sun in a few days will enter the sign of Aries, which means the spring equinox, and of course which means the start of the astrological new year. Aries being the embodiment of the first breath, of the first spark of life. So that will mean the beginning of new projects for a lot of people. Of course, not necessarily the 20th, 21st of March, but the period, the spring period that will begin after. So this full moon can prepare us for that new beginning phase by giving us what we need. May that be a spiritual resource, like a spirit guide. May that be a big, strong inspiration, a big dream. May that be a person, material resources, friends, an old karmic connection being reborn and that appearing in our lives. It can take so very many shapes and forms and sizes, of course, but it prepares us for our future, which is, of course, still uncertain. But it is exactly that uncertainty which scared the life out of us just a few months ago, and needless to say, most of 2021. And unfortunately, for some people, the uncertainty is more real than it ever was in this present moment, and I'm speaking about our neighbors, Ukraine. Yet still, amongst that uncertainty and that living chaos, this Piscean sun magic and Jupiter and Neptune being in the same part of the sky in their ruling sign, their throne basically, their nocturnal world of Pisces, basically the very home, the very source of magic. Well, that is the big dream, that is the Piscean infusion, where there is the scary uncertainty, the violence, the not knowing what tomorrow brings, and simultaneously a mysterious, promising, alluring, optimistic, almost fantastic dream pulls our souls into a direction exactly matching where the uncertainty is heading. So that already says to us, those of us who have been seeing astrological energies play out many times throughout our lives, that the universe is preparing a surprise. It's neither black, neither white, neither doom and gloom, neither the kind of miracle where things just pop out of the sky, but it's something very, very special that will definitely surprise and delight all of us. So something rather, let's say, positive is coming. And this is where the Piscean magic, the most positive, elevated expression of the divine illusion, the promise, the allure, when it is something deep within our soul, deep within from our imagination and fantasy, our divine seed that just calls us, encourages us. It basically, it acts like a carrot on a stick, or like a fata morgana, because we don't know what it is, and we do know that it's a little bit of an illusion, but we do see the divine spark in it, so we have this tendency to be brave enough to believe, to be hopeful, to embody our faith and not really the fears. And this matters a lot, because this is exactly how something really bad turns into something, I'm not saying fantastic and really good, but into something practical rather, that will serve as a basis, as a stable foundation for a future that we will have a choice to make as sparkly, fantastic, rainbow looking as we want once we get there. But for now, we have to be brave and hold on to the frequency, hold on to the divine magic that the spicy season is definitely pouring down on us, but at the same time, be in tune with reality as well. So 50-50, give the Caesar, physical reality, Saturn in Aquarius, what is rightfully his, but also give the divine, the Christ, what is the Christ. And that is holding the frequency of love and this magic that allures us within us, because we will never ever have such a magical and such a surreal Pisces season ever in our lives. So this is a one in a lifetime opportunity, so let's enjoy it. And I do believe that this Pisces illuminated Virgo full moon, it is going to be one of the more magical and more profoundly healing manifestation of the karmic energies that are playing out in our world right now. But of course, again, the signature of the energy 2022, all of those twos, well, 2 ultimately represents duality as well. And the other side of the spectrum is going to be playing out in the world without a doubt, because the Mars and Venus conjunction, now in Aquarius, staying very, very strong, are starting to square Uranus. And Mars was known to the ancients as the lower malefic. And when Mars squares Uranus, well, things happen very, 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 very quickly. And usually things that are not very delightful, because this can represent the risk of earthquakes, this can represent the risk of big explosions, this can represent accidents, this can represent moments of big negligence which lead to catastrophe, physical catastrophe. This can also represent massive flooding and the destructive force of water because of the Pisces planet buildup. This can represent a lot of conflict. But where is the conflict going to be playing out? Well, mostly Aquarius, the internet within society. So on one hand, this will definitely represent a massive, massive, massive war on the internet and anything that we call media or channel of communication, everything. And Venus currency, Venus value money, and everything that has to do with money. So this is also a really strong economic battle as well. But Uranus is ultimately the great revolutionary. Uranus is the planet of rebellion, uprising. And since, Aquarius is its ruling sign, it does represent the human collective. So maybe there will be big, big protests, uprising, revolutions even, the power of the people fighting against everything that wants to suppress it, everything that wants to challenge it. So this will be a massive, massive stir up that will have economic and material repercussions most of all. And chances are for a lot of people, well, their social norm is gonna change very, very, very quickly. Because let's not forget, in the sign of Aquarius, Mars is not very powerful. It is not its most intense expression, yet it is still a square to Uranus. And Mars is the energizer, and it will give a lot of energy, it will give a lot of momentum, a lot of almost electromagnetic manifestation power to that Uranus. So it will activate Uranus, and Uranus will do the destructive, the disruption part of this, especially money, economically, our big stable values. It might also represent gold reserves. It can represent a lot of things, all of which spell chaos and uncertainty on a social level. But much, much later on in the summer, for example, in the month of June, Mars will be in its home sign of Aries, which means it is going to be extremely powerful and strong, and it will hold a square to Pluto. So chances are that whatever transpires, whatever happens in the month of March, well, chances are it's going to be redebated, reignited in the month of June and the summer, because, Aquarius, right now, Mars in Aquarius, people, interhuman connection, the uniqueness of the individual who also matters, equality, liberty, the power of the people, all of this, yes, of course. But when Mars enters the sign of Aries, well, then it's all about the individual. It is all about everyone's personal sovereignty. It is all about the basic human rights and freedoms. So everyone is gonna fight for that in their own unique special way in the summer. That will be a massive, massive theme. And chances are, since those events are gonna be built on whatever happens now, there is gonna be no pardon. This is where people will demand and will do everything in their power to protect their rights, liberties, and sovereignty. The basic expression of Mars in the sign of Aries, the I am, I exist. And I will definitely fight for my survival. But before we get to the summer, well, Mars, first of all, later on, around the 16th of April, entered the sign of Pisces. Now, Pisces is the sign of closures, finalities, terminations, completions, things coming to a closure. So something that is going on right now and is still going to be going on around this Virgo full moon, so the 18th of March, well, in April, so more specifically after the 16th of April, because as I said, Pisces can represent prison, Pisces can represent confinement. So when someone is standing trial, and where I'm getting standing trial, Jupiter in the sign of Pisces. Jupiter is the planet of the law. It is the planet of justice. It is planet of even international courts of justice. So we can expect to see someone be incarcerated or be locked or be contain not being able to move freely and also standing trial for something, or be a subject of a choice, a decision that doesn't really depend on them. So basically it still can mean being trialed or being judged for something that you have done. But of course, all of this is a subject for a later horoscope. Right now, please accept my advice. This is truly the most unique and the most magical Pisces season that we are ever gonna experience, at least in this manner, where the energy is literally collective, for everyone their own special way. This Pisces season, what's left of it, and everything that happens in the sign of Pisces, it does mean something much more special than at any other time. So all we can do is truly embrace this energy and just ride the waves of our souls. For the first time, all of us really have to go where our souls takes us right now, because chances are anything except what is in our souls is a lie, is an illusion, it is a deception. So the only truth that we can trust is what we feel in our hearts of hearts and ultimately in the depths of our souls. Well, this concludes today's reading. Thank you so much for listening. I wish everyone a magical and truly blessed full moon. Until next time, bye for now.